Hi, everybody. When we left last Thursday, we were all left on the edge of our seats listening to Poppy. We're almost at the very end of this book. And when we left off, Poppy had just pierced Mr. Oakhax with the porcupine quill that she got from Aerith. And now she's being dragged along in the air. So I just wanted to read the end of this chapter, and then I'll read a little bit more a little later, and we'll The fact that Mr. Oakhax was dragging a claw, and from that claw dangled a mouse, greatly impeded his flying. His flight path became increasingly wild. In his desperate desire to rid himself of pain, Mr. Oakhax ceased to look where he was heading. Violently he plunged toward the cornfield. Once over it, he lowered his left claw, and that meant Poppy, deliberately thumping it and her along the corn stalks in hope that the quill would be jerked out. Poppy was being battered, but each time she decided to release her hold on the quill, the owl surged forward, causing her to cling more convulsively than ever. Knowing she could not take much more, Poppy tried to see ahead. Mr. Oakhax was skimming low over the corn tops, but when he passed beyond them, he dropped toward the ground. "Let go," Poppy told herself, "let go." But she was feeling so groggy, her own muscles would not respond. Then she saw what the owl was aiming for, the salt lick, and he was picking up speed. In his madness, he was preparing to strike his claw on that. Poppy had wits enough to sense that if he struck the hard salt, it would be the end for her. Let go," she cried, to force herself again. This time she did. Down she plummeted. As she did, Mr. Oakhax first rose, then dropped. Totally out of control, he slammed into the salt head-on. So great was the blow that the salt shattered while the owl went tumbling head over tail in an explosion of feathers. After 3 flips, he ignominiously flopped down like a sack of potatoes on the ground. As for Poppy, she had landed on grass. For a moment she lay there, stunned, battered, and confused. She looked up into the sky but saw nothing. Then she looked across the lawn. She saw him then. Mr. Oakhax lay on his back perfectly still. His claws were drawn up over his chest, slightly curled. The quill stuck straight out of the left one. Scattered about among the feathers were chunks of salt. Poppy stumbled to her feet. She took a wobbly step or two toward the cornfield. Then she stopped and looked back. Mr. Oakhax had not moved. She stared at him. Slowly, not sure if she should believe what she was thinking, she crept closer to the fearsome owl. After every few steps she paused, looked, sniffed. Still there was no movement. Close to Mr. Oakhax's head now, Poppy stopped again. The owl's great eyes were wide open, staring up into the sky. His devil-like tufts of feathers were bent. His beak was open. As Poppy watched, it snapped listlessly. "Mr. Oakhax?" No answer. She took a step closer. "Mr. Oakhax?" His head turned slightly. For a moment, "Sometimes," he murmured, "sometimes I wonder why I bother to protect you." With that, his beak made a final clack shut. His eyes closed. Poppy knew it then. Mr. Oakhax was no longer alive. So there is the picture. So Poppy doesn't have to worry about Mr. Oakhax anymore, which is good news for Poppy and the rest of the mice. And she also solved the problem of the salt lick, because now the salt is all on the ground for Aerith to enjoy. I will check back in again and read the last chapter of this book. I'm happy that Poppy is she's safe at last. Have a great afternoon, everybody.